Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, good. So I'm glad that we're, at least thus far, we'll be a small, intimate crowd, so you can help me think about things that I was excited for this opportunity to think about. When Benny asked if I would participate in this series, which I hope was great. I can't fault anyone for not being here, because this is my first appearance. And I'm sure everyone's listening at home. I submitted a title, and then Benny was like, "That's great. I'd love to be at that shiur, but it's not part of it. Doesn't fit into our theme." So I was like, "Okay." So in the 11th hour, I'm like, "Okay, here's an idea," and it was sort of one of those. I will put it out there because it's something I want to get back to, and then it'll be an opportunity to get back to it. As opposed to the other one, which was like, I got this. It's like in my pocket, ready to go. Okay, I'm returning to texts that some texts that I don't know, 25 years been sort of really taken by, and 25 years is a long time, and this was an opportunity to revisit old loves, old passions, old intrigues, and connect them to some new thinking. And the new thinking is actually emerged out of some of my teaching in our modern Jewish thought class at the high school, where we've been in a unit, we're done now, but we were in a unit, Job, moving into commentaries on Job, moving into post-Holocaust theology. So one of the thinkers that is helping me think about some old loves is a new thinker that I've encountered through teaching her. It's a professor, Melissa Raphael. I don't know if anyone's heard of her. She was new to me a couple of years ago. And she's a post-Holocaust theologian, a feminist theologian, and I am intrigued to link up her thinking with some of these old texts. So thank you for the opportunity. We may get through much of this since we're a small crowd, so that might be great. But I said as my son called me tonight right before I was leaving, and I said, I feel like I went from, I've in the last week and a half moved from one stage of early proto-feminism to another stage of of feminism in the course of like 10 days thinking about this. So I'll take you through the journey, and I'd love for your contributions. Okay, so I want to start with I think as with all of these texts, they'll be familiar to you. I want to start with that Yirmiyahu text, that Jeremiah text, and I just want to start with it in a way without any setup, other than what I've just said about sort of my own kind of what got me to this moment. Because I just would love. It's a familiar text. It's as we know, it's a part of the Haftorah for the second day of Rosh Hashanah, and so familiar probably from there, if not other places. And I would just love reactions to the text. Just its image, just the image in the text of Rachel. The title of this conversation is Rachel and the Redemptive Work of Weeping Women. More of a mouthful than in the Shul Bulletin, which was just, I think, Rachel and a new model of redemption, just to kind of keep it short and sweet. And so let's read the text, and then my question really is just like reactions. What strikes you about this text? How do you think about it? How do you feel about it? So those are the questions that I'll come back to. So Kol bar ma nishma nehi bechi tamurim Rachel mevakal baneha me'ana lehinachem al baneha kienenu. Ko amar Hashem min'i kolech mi bechi ve'nayach mi dim'at ki yesh schar lefulatech ne'um Hashem v'shavu me'eretz oyev. Yesh tikva la'achritech ne'um Hashem v'shavu vanim l'kulam. Skipping a couple of psukim. Haven yakir li Ephraim im yalet hashuim kimidei dabri bo zachor es kerenu od al ken hamu me'ai lo rachem arachamenu ne'um Hashem. That verse 19 is something that I of course brought in because it's one of the links to Rosh Hashanah in terms of the Musaf Amida, in terms of the Zichronot, and is relevant anyway, but that's also a link to Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so thus says the Lord, a cry is heard in Ramah, wailing, bitter weeping, Rachel weeping for her children. She refuses to be comforted for her children who are gone. Restrain your voice from weeping, your eyes from shedding tears. For there is reward for your labor, declares the Lord. They shall return from the enemy's land. And there is hope for your future, declares the Lord. Your children shall return to their country. Truly Ephraim is dear son to me, a child that is dandled. Right, Yeled Shashuim, dandled. I don't know if anyone knows what that word means in English, but it's Shashuim we know, right? So I did have to look up dandled. I don't know if you like bouncing, right? Exactly. But I didn't know dandled, right? We know Shashuim. I didn't know dandled. Like it's a toy. You're playing, a playing gesture. Whenever I've turned against him, my thoughts would dwell on him still. Zachor's Karenu Od, I recall him. That is why my heart yearns for him. Hamumei Ailo, I will receive him back in love. Again, Rachem Archamenu, we could talk about the translation, declares the Lord. Okay, just reactions to the text.
Who's Ephraim?
Who's Ephraim? Ephraim is
What did she want for Ephraim?
Why Ephraim? So in the context of Yirmiyahu, so Ephraim is Rachel's grandson, one of Joseph's sons, adopted by Yaakov, and northern tribes, right? So we're in the northern tribes. Ephraim is exiled, Binyamin is exiled, Rachel's children are exiled. So she's crying for her exiled children, northern tribes. The book of Jeremiah is a complicated book in terms of describing the Assyrian exile and the catastrophe, the destruction that was, in the wake of that exile, the impending Babylonian exile, and hopefully the possibility of averting that exile. And Jeremiah is stepping in to try to imagine the possibility of averting that exile, which has been foretold and seems imminent. Okay, so again, back to reactions. Yes?
Ephraim happens to be the son whom Yaakov Avinu crossed his hands when Yosef brought his sons before his father and said, Menashe will be a great nation, but Ephraim even better. But also, is Ephraim not where Joshua came from? Am I wrong?
Yeah.
So there are not so good kings, and yet Joshua is an anchor. So Ephraim has this mixed people status, and yet there's a stature of greatness, certainly that comes from Joshua, Yosef, etc. But there's a Torah commentary, even before Yirmiyahu, that talks about Yaakov explaining to Yosef, I think it is, when they're coming back, still on the way back from Laban's house, if you will, that Yosef, I think you're upset with me. I understand that I buried your mother on the way, and yet I got some, my terminology, I read the commentary, I got some guidance from God here, that your mom should be here so that she can plead for our children when they will need to come back in the future.
Right.
She is going to be their inspiration before God.
Right. So you're speaking about what we know from the biblical material, that Rachel's not buried in Marad Machpelah. She's the only foremother, matriarch, who's not part of the ancestral burial grounds, and buried along the way, on the way back to the land, in the land, and then there's a Midrash that Yaakov foresaw that she would be helpful with her returning sons, with her exiled sons. So an explanation of that, a midrashic explanation of that unexplained biblical gesture. Great.
I noticed that God's response to Rachel's crying is that she should stop crying because it will eventually be better. I think often things have to actually be better before we stop crying, but here it's just stop crying, wipe your tears, because eventually there'll be a happy ending. And that's sort of interesting that the promise of the happy ending is the comforting message rather than anything actually improving right then at that moment.
Great. I want to get back to that. Yeah.
There's also, it's like part of what I guess the key God here is saying about the crying is that your crying has done something, right? There's like a reward for your labor. Wait, I mean, what is Rachel's labor in this context other than the crying that's going on here? So it's like, stop because it worked or something like
I
that.
thought it was.
It's interesting, I didn't think of that.
Yeah, I thought it was like your labor as a mother hasn't been in vain.
Yeah.
Your children are not lost forever. But,
Maybe. I mean,
Yeah,
but I think also it's like
yeah.
But what influence did Rachel really have in Ephraim's life? And that she didn't know, she never knew him, so it's like
Yeah.
interesting.
Very good.
So there's
You
also,
didn't
It's interesting
cry
to think
for
about the
nothing.
distinction between weeping and labor. One is pure emotion, one's pure sort of rational. Like as though there's some counting for it.
yeah, yeah. And the question is like, what's the labor? Is it the labor of the weeping? Is it the labor, her maternal labor,
Mhm.
right? Is it past labor? Is it present labor of weeping?
Right. She died in labor, right?
She died in labor, right?
Cruella wouldn't be the word for that.
No, no, it was not.
Yeah.
Any other reactions to the, any other?
I just feel like spatially, there's a lot of kind of up and down there and not there. Like even the fact that her cry is heard in Ramah, which is presumably a high place, but then the weeping is kind of low. I don't know, in my mind, it's sort of like that, low, very kind of depressed, deep sorrow in the depths of that, and she kind of can't get out of that. She's sort of like swimming in a sea of tears, almost like drowning. And like the children are there and they're not there, they will be there. And maybe even like the bouncing Ephraim, I hadn't thought about that till you said that, but maybe, so there's something spatially going on there.
Ups and downs, presences and absences.
Right, yeah.
Great. And there's conversation about Ramah. Is Ramah a place? Is Ramah on high?
Right.
And so that's also interesting. Anything else? I think for me, when I first paused over this text, I felt like arrested by this image of, and this is before I had children, I just felt arrested by this image of a mother who refuses to be comforted, right? This refusal to be comforted. I mean, it's true, she's told to be, comforted, but in the text we don't see her become comforted. Right? It's a whether she's supposed to be comforted in the future, whether she's supposed to be comforted in the moment. So this idea of this, almost like eternally weeping mother, and wow, like what an unbelievably powerful image. I mean, I can't think of another image we have like that biblically, and then of course, makes me think about why Rachel is this eternally weeping, or this woman who refuses comfort. And what is it about Rachel that makes her this, the image here? There was something, I don't know, like the pathos, just like the pathos of that, as very, very powerful for me. So we'll come back to Rachel in one moment, and I just attached onto here a text that I think is in a similar vein, which, given that it's 2 weeks before Pesach, is worth pausing on. The one right below it from Sota, which again probably is familiar to you, and if it's not familiar to you, definitely worth looking at and maybe bringing to your Seder tables. But another one of these texts where it's why were we redeemed from Egypt? We were redeemed from Egypt because of the deeds of the righteous women. Right? What did the righteous women do? And then it goes on to tell what the righteous women did. And it's essentially a tale of seduction in the fields. And it's men who have given up hope and don't want to continue, and women who are invested in continuity. And seduction is necessary in order to procreate because men seemingly are uninterested and refusing. And it works. And then I only gave you a piece of it because we're not going to focus on this text. But the incredible thing about this text is that God is midwife in this text, right? So God is the one delivering the babies in the fields, and then they're being hidden in the fields, and then they emerge miraculously, and the redemption is the hosts are leaving because of this miraculous occurrence, and it's these either babies or these women or both who are the ones who identify God before Sinai. So the revelation is to the women and the babies, it's not entirely clear how to read it, but the Ze'eli Van Vehu of, Shirat Hayam, which is this revelatory moment pre-Sinai, right after the Exodus, is it's the women and the children who identify God first. And so So you have Egypt, the women are responsible for the Exodus. You have Revelation, the first moment of Revelation, or a moment, another moment. I mean, one of the big dramatic moments of Revelation for the people, and it's the children and the women. And then at Sinai, I didn't pull these texts, but you have even Ezra's reading of Chet HaEgel, where the women refrain from giving their jewelry. So, okay, now you've located women as the sort of saving remnant at Golden Calf episode, another big, moment in Israelite history. Then you have the building of the Mishkan, and the women are the one who hand over their mirrors from this Egyptian episode, and it's Moshe who's like, no, those mirrors don't belong, and then God's like, no, they're right, and the mirrors not only belong, but they're at the Kior, right? So you have these incredible, you could write a narrative of almost like a lot of Pardes would call it, biblical scholar Lana Pardes would call it a counter-narrative, right? You basically have this, but it's quite a counter-narrative, because it's women at every central nation-building event, and they're the ones who are, how to say it, how to describe it, right? They get it. They are responsible for continuity, right? They're ultimately.
Why counter-narrative as opposed to just a parallel narrative or something hidden narrative?
Well, what?
So it doesn't make it into the
Exactly, right? So in other words, right. So in other words, and I think that it's called a counter narrative in the feminist readings, because it's a narrative that didn't make it into the Torah. I mean, you have to read between. Let's put it this way: you have to read between the lines to read it in or out, depending on your view. Of the Torah.
Yeah.
And the thing that's fascinating, of course, is that these are men reading it. Mm-hmm. It's not women reading it.
And writing.
So reading and writing and passing it on and teaching it and all the above, right? So this really dramatic, women's story is told by men. Mm-hmm. So I think that was part of the thing where it's I, as a young reader of text, am really struck by these moments in this totally androcentric Torah, world of these really unbelievably powerful female narratives, female moments, and what to make of them. And Rachel seemed to be in that same camp. Here we have the return is about Rachel, right? The return is about Rachel. I mean, don't we have any other people that can be responsible for this? So there's just something to really think about through the eyes of the rabbis and through our own eyes today as readers of this text and as inheritors of the significance of this tradition. Yes?
She seems to me to be the quintessential person that would be the person to
why? Why? Great segue. Why would she be the quintessential person?
She, from the start, Yaakov Avinu has his eye on her. He labors his first 7 years.
Good. So we're on page 2 and 3. We're all in the biblical text now. Yes.
She gives up her posture and her position and her potential rank of being the initial first wife in favor of her sister because of the minhag at the time, and she gives that up because her sister should go first, as their way goes, and then she tries to even do something good for her father. When she, according to the commentary I read, the spin on the commentary I read, that she secrets away his Avodah Zarah stuff and icons and whatnot, and tries to hide them.
Yeah.
And then she pays the ultimate price when Yaakov Avinu himself says, "If anybody has any of your stuff, let him die."
Yep.
And she pays that price. Who's better for this?
Love the reading. So it's interesting. So I mean, you more or less gave us pshat. There's a little bit of drash in there, right? But if you think about who Rachel is biblically, and I pulled out some of the material, not all of the material biblically, but most of it that gives you an impression. And so who is Rachel, right? Who is Rachel? And basically, the rabbinic inheritance of Rachel is of two minds. Right? One mind is that she's impious, that she's actually, overly aggressive, overly assertive. She's wandering out. First of all, she's a shepherd, right? Wandering out alone. The only other woman in the Bible who wanders out alone, bad things happen to her. When Rachel wanders out alone, she's kissed by Yaakov unsolicitedly. Okay, that's already your first like sign that what's up here, right? Then she's, steals. She's jealous. She's begrudging. She's begrudging of her sister. She's begrudging of having no children. She would rather die than have no children. She then gets one child and she wants another child. Right, so that's like one possible way to read it. So the rabbinic tradition sort of saying, okay, we got to do our number and figure out how to turn Rachel into like a pious woman. So that's like one strand. And the other strand is, no, she's in fact a pious woman. And like we see her as a pious woman. So those are the two possibilities, right? So it's interesting how you read her. And again, like we're like a learned audience here. We don't have to go through all the biblical material here, but you can, I don't know, what's your take on Rachel? What's your take? I think one thing maybe to point out, maybe we hadn't thought about it in a while. If you're on the third page in the biblical material, it was interesting to me, which I haven't paused over this in a while, that when she names Naphtali, who is a child of hers through Bilhah, she says, Niftalti im achoti, Naftuli Elohim. Niftalti im achoti gam yecholti v'tikra shema Naftali. A contest of God. I waged with my sister, yes, and I have prevailed. And according to Alter's translation, awesome grapplings, right? Naftuli Elohim, which I think is great, right? So Rachel is like this Jacob-like figure, right? She's a Jacob counterpart. And there's lots of ways to read her as a Jacob counterpart, even in the Pshat. She's
the one he loves.
Yes. She's the one he loves, yes. So
Because she is.
She's his counterpart.
Yeah,
right.
So that was nothing.
Meaning she, right? Echav nafshi, right? I'm like right. So I thought that line I wanted to highlight that line. Why she stole the trafim? Again, the commentary trying to render her pious wants to make it one way. Why did some want to say she died in childbirth as a punishment for stealing the trafim because she obviously was still attached to them. She hadn't given up her old ways. So again, it depends on how you're going to read the pshat.
Conflict with the sibling also is a connection to Yaakov.
Right. Right. And she's jealous. She's jealous of her sister. And in the pshat, there's no love loss, right? There's absolutely no love loss at all, right, between the two of them. Okay. So let's. There's other things to point out in the pshat, but maybe we'll work our way backwards once we look at some drash. On page, let's see. Oh, she's very clever. Again, just to remind you of the way she gets away with stealing the trafim from her father, right? Remember what she says, right on page 4? Right.
I'm mentioning I can't get up.
Can't get off the camel. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm
please.
the way of the women, right? So she's a trickster. She's clever. She's very assertive in some ways, but she's also only dialogue is given to her 10 years in, as the narrator goes. She's taken, loved, right? So okay. So now we get to page 5. We get to, again, a really dramatic moment, a really, I think, painful and dramatic moment. So this is the moment of her dying in childbirth. She already has Yosef. Vayehi b'tzeit nafsha ki meta v'tikra shmo ben Oni v'aviv kara lo Binyamin. The only woman in the Bible who gives a name to her child whose husband changes the name. Dramatic.
It's a dramatic thing too.
Ben-Oni can mean either son of my strength or son of my sorrow. So a multivalent name and points, maybe points in both directions. And Binyamin also, has some potential for reading it two ways. Son of my right hand, the son who has gone south. Right? So you could read it in two ways also. So this is a dramatic one. Then she, v'tamat Rachel v'tikaber b'derech Ephrata hi Beit Lechem. Vayetzev Yaakov matzeva al kirvata, matzeva kirvata. Okay. No sense of Yaakov's sorrow. We only get that when he narrates it later. Barry, as you said rightly, he narrates his sorrow, which is he was grieving her death, which is why he buried her there. But he saw, says Rashi, that she was going to be essential in the Return of the Exiles, but not in the Pshat. Yes.
Just real quickly, what do you think is, other than the fact that the name was corrected, what is the corrected? Like, what do you think the name does to that?
Well, good question.
Why
Right, good question. I mean, it seems to be that it hard. I mean, first of all, hard to say. Hard to say. If it's son of my sorrow, then it's a change to son of my, my right hand man, right? So then it's no, this poor guy. I'm not gonna give him saddle him with that name, right? But actually, I've read readers that think really the pshat probably is son of my strength.
Yeah.
So
it could mean bigger.
yeah, son of my right. So I don't know.
Maybe the strength is like the last of my strength. And she's like, this is all I
like
can
expiring
give left,
strength.
And I think, I mean, to me, it's like Yaakov doesn't can't spend his entire life calling to somebody the same. Be reminded of. I mean, he's going to be reminded of Rachel every time he talks to this child already, and he can't say every time he says that name, he's going to break a little inside.
That she's his friend.
Or that even if it does mean, even if her name alluded to strength, his name maybe makes that more clarified, so he wouldn't be teasing the playground or something. It's sort of makes it. In other words, he's not correcting her; he's just clarifying her intention.
The guy whose grandfather tried to kill his father. Because he shouldn't be so loaded.
Doesn't want to be
right. Don't read it. You don't read it this way. Read it this way. It's an altikret, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. But it is, I mean, to absences and presences, where Tamara sort of started. I think in the pshat of Rachel's narrative, you just have there's a lot of silences, and a lot of people talking for her, and this is sort of like the perfect end to this life where. She's not given any dialogue. The first dialogue she's given in the narrative is chronologically 10 years later, but also substantively, it is, I want a child. And then the first dialogue she has with her sister is a fight over the mandrakes, right? Over the aphrodisiac that, she was hoping would work for her fertility. So it's like this, and she's a shepherd, and she's going out on her own. And, so it's like,
Who is she?
Who is she? Where's her voice? Right? Where's her voice? And then she names her child, which was a very conventional thing for mothers to do, to name their child. And then she's the only woman whose husband takes away the name or clarifies the name, right? But either way, it's a rename.
Yeah.
Either way,
It's
it's a
her dying
rename.
wish, too.
Right? What?
Her dying wish, too.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So it's really powerful.
She
And
said something
She's changed that tell you though. He's like, pick one to change.
Right. No, but I think I think the grappling, that one I could even do a spin on. That would be better. I don't know. I find it to be a poignant shot, and then the burial. The burial along the way, and okay. So then we go to Midrash Echarabah at the Ptichta there, and this was also one of those texts, and I think this is actually originally how I even got to Kol Barama Nishma, right? Because the Kol Barama Nishma, the Jeremiah 31, is the punchline of, well, it's not really the right way to say it, but is the punchline of this really long extended proem to Midrash Echarabah. There's 25 ptichtaot, and I won't get into what a ptichta is and what people think a ptichta is, but what I will say about this is that it's very late. They think it's the 12th or 13th century, even though much material in Midrash Echarabah is earlier. They actually think, and they do it from language and words, that this, which is probably among the more well-known midrashim, is actually quite late. So to that summary of the midrashic tradition that I gave you of the two options on Rachel, this one is sort of singular, but it also emerges in the 12th and 13th century, which we can say more about in a little bit. And it's very long, and if you don't know it, worth reading it, worth studying it. What's fantastic about it is that it's this entire effort of, starts out, God wants to cry. God wants to mourn, God wants to weep, and God doesn't know how to, and God wants to learn it from people first. And how does a human being do it? And then, okay, fine, and then gets Jeremiah, go find me the patriarchs, I want to, and then Jeremiah goes off to find the patriarchs, and they're all just called up. He knows where to find them, because they're buried in Marat HaMachpelah, so he knows where to find them. And he goes and finds them, they're all just like, what do you want? Why me? Why me? He gets Moshe, why me? I don't know. The patriarchs try to intercede on behalf of, to weep for God, to intercede on behalf of God. Abraham, and this is the classic, Abraham is like, can you forgive my children on behalf of my merits? Akedah Yitzchak. Yitzchak comes up and says, can you forgive the children on behalf of my merits? I was willing to be sacrificed. Yaakov gets up, can you forgive the children on behalf of my merits? I suffered tzar gidul banim. I raised these children with all the difficulties of raising these children. Moshe, patriarch after patriarch after patriarch pleading on behalf of the Israelites doesn't work. In comes Rachel on page 6. Fantastic. Be'ota sha'a kafza Rachel imenu. Yep. Right?
I said she leaps up. She's like,
yeah. I thought you said kifza.
Oh, no.
I was like, what?
No.
Yes, leaps up, yes. And it's like, and nobody else, first of all, the other ones are called, and also, where's she coming from? But she's like, she's just...
You have to walk all the way from
And, right. And Jeremiah didn't find her. Jeremiah didn't search for her. Right? She leaps in. Okay. I was beloved. Yaakov worked for my father for 7 years. My father said he was going to switch me. So I knew. My father told me, it was really difficult for me. I knew about it. It was difficult for me. I told my husband. This is the only Midrash where she's the one who finds out about the plan. She's the one who devises the plan, tells her husband. So I devised all these simanim and told them to my husband so that we could avoid the plan, basically. Changed my mind, although interesting language, I felt sorry for myself, I took pity on myself, I had compassion for myself, right? Of course I could change my mind, but that's a great way to say it.
But it's similar to like God at the beginning of the Noah story.
Yeah.
regret.
Exactly. Which I think is an interesting way, like that regret comes out of self-compassion, right? Self-care, which is our theme here. V'savalti et ta'avati. And I suffered my desire, which the translator here, this is not my translation, this actually I took from, I think it's I was going to say, I don't know who Trip J, not Ramon, or Gali Hassan Rokem. I'm not sure which one of the two scholars it is. I think I took it out of Einat Ramon's.
Centralization.
I think I took it out of Einat Ramon's piece where she's quoting Gali Hassan Rokem. So I think it may be Gali Hassan Rokem, folklorist Gali Hassan Rokem. Either way, we can read it in Hebrew. So I suffered my desire, right? I suffered my desire, and I took pity, compassion on my sister, so she shouldn't be ashamed, disgraced. So they did it. And I passed to my sister all of the simanim. Changed my mind, gave her all the simanim. So he would think she was Rachel.
It sounds Greek.
Right?
Sounds like a 12th, 13th century.
Mary, weeping Mary, mother. Are people familiar with this Midrash? Yeah? Yeah.
It's a kinada.
Yeah.
But the juxtaposition between, as we're reading it slowly, like that I suffered it, I can't remember the word now, instead of changing my mind. And then the juxtaposition between, I was not jealous, I did not shame her.
Right. And what's the pshat? And in the pshat, she's explicitly, I'm jealous.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I love the connection between, like, that her voice Like it's the voice that can even be, the weeping of the voice that can be heard to Ramah is like, follows like her kindness and generosity or sadness and generosity
Yeah.
with her voice under the bed.
And you gotta be a picture, she's under the bed.
Yeah.
And it's a ventriloquist act. I mean, of course we have rabbis under the beds, right? Or students of rabbis under the beds, right? So this is also playing with that whole trope of like you learn Torah from your teacher, you know, and here we have Rachel under the bed. I mean, it's not exact. I mean, is she learning Torah from her teacher? I don't think so.
It's almost the opposite.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So, but we're playing with that trope as well. We'll get back to this question of voice. I want to get back to that. Okay, and not only that. She was silent. I'm under the bed. I'm doing the talking. And I respond to him on everything. Can you imagine, right? You gotta just imagine. So painful, so unbelievably painful. Kidei shelo yakir l'kol achoti. Kidei shelo yakir l'kol achoti, v'gamalti chesed ima. V'gamalti chesed ima. V'lo kineti ba, v'lo hotzeti l'charpa. So I did acts of loving kindness so that she shouldn't be disgraced, so that shelo yakir l'kol achoti, so that he shouldn't recognize the voice of my sister.
It's an opposite of what Jacob would have done.
Hakol kol Yaakov v'yadayim midei Esav, says the Midrash. The voice is the voice of Jacob, the hands are the hands of
The dying of Rhea and the voice of Rachel.
Yep. I mean, brilliant.
Body's the body plan.
Exactly.
And
The
the
body and hands, right? But Jacob, wow, you really met the woman you loved, didn't you? Okay. Uma ani she'ani basar v'dam. And by the way, this is like also a classic midrash, right? Which is like mashal and nimshal. It's right, Rachel being the teacher to God, and she's right. And ma ani she'ani basar v'dam. And what am I? That I am a person of flesh and blood. Afar ve'efer lo kinek litzara sheli v'lo tzetiha levusha. That I'm a person. I'm a person of dust and ashes. I wasn't jealous of her and didn't embarrass her. Why are you jealous of idolatry that ain't bo mamash, that there's nothing?
What? Can you say that again?
Why are you jealous of idolatry? There's nothing in them. I suffered my desire. Put aside my jealousy. God, you're jealous of idols? Those are powerful words, Rachel.
Also because idolatry and sex are so often associated.
And conquest. Yes, Barry.
I'm sorry, I have to ask. Is that a good translation, the word jealous, of what you're reading?
Yeah.
Because we see so many commentaries when the word jealous comes up and other things like that, that of course God can't be jealous. So there has to be another angle where the human spin, and maybe therefore the language, is speaking to us in terms that we feel and we know, like jealousy, and yet the real spin is something else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think one answer is, or one response to what you're saying is, listen, it's all human language. So everything we're reading is human language, inspired, revealed, but meaning it eventually gets to human language. So we're anyway in the domain of approximating God, no matter what. No matter what, we're in the domain of approximating our imagination or what we imagine God to be, because none of us know God, right? Because if I knew God, I'd be God. So we're all in that imaginative language, whether your imaginative language or whether your language, you're more comfortable with language that doesn't say anything positive about God, and you're in that Maimonidean tradition. The rabbis are in a tradition of saying a lot of words about God in a very imaginative and quite visceral and human way.
Right. You said, I didn't act upon my jealous feelings, so you, God, don't act as though you are jealous, right? Whether or not God is jealous or not.
Right. But I just think the rabbis, it's interesting, and especially on these imagery of God weeping, it's all over Jeremiah. It's all over. It's all over. It's all over a lot of the prophetic material. And in some ways we haven't read it that way because we're so influenced by this anti-anthropomorphic reading. But then as a student of Michael Fishbane, and then you start to read the Midrashim, and you realize, no, it's hahefech, it's the opposite. They're going bold. And why are they going bold? Because it's it says that. It actually says that. I actually wouldn't say God's crying, but it actually says in the text, God's crying. Or actually says, God wants to cry. Call the weeping women so that we can cry, so that tears can flow from my eyes. Because God wants to cry. And God needs humans to help God cry. Which is in the pshat of Jeremiah. Okay, so she's trying to appeal to God to be at least a little bit like a human, if not entirely like a human, right? Okay, so then miyad nitgalgelu rachamav shel hakadosh baruch hu. Miyad nitgalgelu rachamav shel hakadosh baruch hu. I think you have to nitgalgelu. His rachamim were turning, but I think you might have to be imagining the divine chariot above, right? You might have to imagine the wheels are turning and he's moving from the throne of Deen to the throne of mercy, right? Nitgal Gilu, right? And you could get it more poetic, he's flowing, he's okay. And then we get to our Yirmiyahu text, Ko Amar Hashem, Kol Barama Nishma, now read as, what's Kol Barama Nishma?
God's cry.
Right? It's worked. Her appeal has worked. Rachel levakal banem mini kol lech mibecha ki yesh schar lepulatech. And now, what's the schar to your pula?
Your argument.
And what pula?
With your that being under the bed.
Exactly. Yesh schar lepulatech. Yesh schar lepulatech. What's your pula? You got under the bed. You handed over the simanim, and you suffered. And you put aside your jealousy, despite your ta'ava, despite your desire. And that is the schar for your pu'ulah. I no longer can hear Jeremiah not hearing that. I have not ever since I've learned this Midrash, have I been able to actually hear the pu'ulah as anything other than that. Of course, that's not the pshat. Right? I mean, the pshat really probably is something more, and if you get into the nitty-gritty of the ancient Near East and the whole tradition of women weeping as mourners, as professional mourners, the pu'ulah was probably also the pu'ulot of mourning, the professional mourning, that may have even included dancing, certain whirling and body movement, and the pu'ulot was probably in the pshat that. But I now only hear it this way. Okay, I just pulled the Jeremiah text underneath this because I wanted you just to see all the weeping and all the women that are weeping in Jeremiah. But now I want to, okay, so I'll hold it for a second. We'll finish up with Melissa Raphael. But any comments, any thoughts, any questions? Anything anyone want to say? Yeah.
Having pointed this out to us, it's just really, really striking. Of all the things, this would be, her self-sacrifice. I don't know, it just seems very, it's a lot to unpack there, that this act of self-sacrifice, this suffering she endured, for the sake of not embarrassing her sister, that's the thing that gets this promise of return, not Abraham, not the Akedah, not Yosef with Eshet Potiphar. This moment, that's what,
I know, and that's why I was like, however many years ago, stop. Yeah. What is going on here? I mean, it's not about the Akedah. It's right. It's not about Isaac. It's not about. I mean, and not only that, it's about something that doesn't show up. You got to read between the lines, and they're reading it, and this is the thing, right?
Yeah. And so you said this text is
12th and 13th century. Yeah.
So when you say self-sacrifice in 12th and 13th century, is there some kind of possible Catholic influence there?
Yeah.
Where self-sacrifice and Lent and
So I'm so glad you're asking that. So it looks like there's a convergence in the 12th and 13th century. What scholars of Christianity have noted is that there's a rise in Marian worship in that time period. That Mary becomes a more central figure in the Catholic tradition, and it seems to be linked to a desire for more immediacy, more as a less ethereal, like something really more, more mamish, to like some more connection. And there's a rise in Marian worship. And it's possible that, whether it's influenced by or emerging out of those same religious impulses, right? But there's a scholar who's done a lot of work on Rachel through thinking about the traditions around her tomb, and actually the emergence of the cult in the 19th century, the 20th century, and she goes through a lot of sort of the tradition of reading. And she suggests that link, and she says, is it influence or is it parallel development? I'm a little inclined to think parallel development, to be honest, because, well, I think you have to think through, and this goes back to the question on Rachel, right? Like, what is the function of weeping women? Like, what is the function of an image of Rachel where her self-sacrifice is, this kind of Gemilut Chasadim, it's called Gemilut Chasadim, right? Which, by the way, Anat Ramon, who was the head of the Schechter Institute in Israel, she uses this tradition of Gemilut Chasadim labeled in this Midrash to make an argument for the Imahot in the liturgy. Because she wants to say that, we have all over the place in the Midrashic tradition these like incredibly powerful narratives about women who are recognized in the tradition. They're minorities, they're counter-traditions, but they say it, Gemilut Chasadim. They're significant acts of loving kindness. So I think we have to think through what is powerful about imagining Rachel in this way, and this 12th century text who's reading Kol B'Ramah, which is a text about a weeping woman. Right? So it's all somehow, I think part of that same, what's powerful about that?
We look at Rachel as being stupid, or substituting for her sister, or we say that's tradition, and you should be like Rachel.
First of all, I know the camera's on, but you can say anything stupid if you want now. That's good with me. I'm not that.
I don't need that introduction.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
Does this text make her into a heroine?
Yeah. So I'm glad you're asking that question in that way, because this gets back to, so these texts about women, and I'm like, wow, women are the heroes, but what's their heroic action? Procreation. What's the heroic action? Seducing their husbands to have children. What's the heroic action? Self-sacrifice under the bed, handing over the one they love. What's the heroic action? Crying eternally for their children. That, really? Really?
Can something be admirable and heroic but not a role model that you would want for your daughter? I don't know, that's, I think there are...
All the forefathers. All the forefathers too.
Right, but I guess there are people, a lot of people like that actually. I really admire them, and it's something really powerful about their example, but I hope my children don't
really
follow
they
that.
did so I can learn from them.
Yeah.
You're not really going to.
Or just people who have very accomplished, are very accomplished in one piece of their life, and maybe their home life is in shambles, right?
So 25 years ago, I'm like, oh, wow, these texts that no one talks about, they're not in there, you don't read them, you got to find them, and you got to talk about them. And now, 25 years later, I'm like, wait, do I still like these texts? I do, I'm still compelled, but I'm with you, Mel. I'm kind of like, how do I read them now? And find them not just admirable, but no thank you, or kind of admirable, but they're in the past. Right, and we can do that for everything. My project is how to make the Akedah alive for me today. My project is how to make, Isaac's move alive for me today. My project is how to make Rachel's move alive for me today. I don't want to just admire her from the past. So that was part of so 10 days ago, I'm like, all right, what do I want, how, what am I going to say? What do we want to say? And I think I have something to offer here, but I think that's the question. What do we want to say about these texts?
I guess I'm just struck by some parts of her experience where she's very assertive and kind of she is powerful, and then there are many parts of her story where she's powerless, and she's kind of holding on to both of those. I gave her the simanim, but then I'm under the bed and I'm like, oh my God, I'm sacrificing this for myself. I don't have children. I don't get to be the first one married, or I can jump up and say to God, God, how can you do this? But then I'm crying and I can't stop crying, and I'm I'm in despair, and there's no hope, and I'm never going to be able to like get it together. So it's just kind of interesting that she's sort of, there's both aspects of her, that in her, I guess, and I don't know what to make of that, but.
I think power comes out of choice, and so whether or not you would do it or not, it's admirable that she exercises choice. We don't see that often happening. The Yaakov story is not one really sort of choice.
I also am cynical a little bit. I mean, I'm in love and cynical, but I want to push past my cynicism. It's like, oh, good. So the rabbis don't want the sisters to be fighting. They want the sisters to be, reconciled. And there's a reason why men are not allowed to marry sisters, and it's called the story of Rachel and Leah. So then you have this 12th century text, which is like, oh, peace, shalom bayit, right? And that also just feels like this. You took away the spice. You took away okay, at least there was honest emotions. Right. I'm jealous, and we're in conflict, and now you've just made us all. I have to sacrifice myself, I gotta be a martyr, and we're all one big happy family.
Maybe this is the thing that leads to that, though. Maybe this is Rachel makes the decision to this thing that she feels is right, and then she regrets it and hates her sister for the rest of her life after that. Maybe she's like, I can't believe I did that. Maybe it was the right thing to do, but it still hurt me so much that I can't look her in the eye, can't talk to her civilly, I can't stand the way that my husband treats her. And that's sort of she seems to be the kind of person who just right. Thinking about this now, the kind of person who in every part of her life doesn't fit in properly, right? She's the odd one out in the family. She's out. She doesn't seem to. She's out with the sheep. She's not with the rest of the family for whatever reason. Yeah. She's different than she has a totally different relationship with her husband than his other three, than his other wife and the concubines. She doesn't have a good relationship with her father apparently. Or seems to. She has this weird relationship with her father where she doesn't. I don't know. She's stealing from him or trying to do something good for him.
Lying to him.
Doesn't know how to do it right. It's just she doesn't know how to do things. She doesn't know how to be with people in the right in a way that's good for her. I guess right. She's doing this thing that's good for her sister, but it's not good for her. Maybe she's out being a shepherd. And it's good for her father. That's not being a shepherd. Maybe it's not good for her because she gets kissed by this random guy at the well. And it seems like. Her decisions all seem to go awry in the things she's making, ultimately for her. And maybe this is the way she's then she can be okay, now I can come to God. Look, God, I made all these mistakes, I made all these decisions that were bad for me. Don't make a decision that's bad for you by not forgiving your children or not relating to your children in a way that's civil or something like that.
It's interesting what you're saying. I mean, it's helpful to remind ourselves that this is all happening before the narrative is telling us that, she's jealous of her, right? Mm-hmm. So, right.
But this is when they're just sisters and they're just two people.
Right, yes, that's helpful.
After that is the bad.
That's helpful, yes.
I would insist that in modern times we would find this story despicable. I mean, this girl should have told her sister, forget it, baby.
He's mine. Right. So again, what are the...
We're still teaching the story as if it's a good thing that she did. It isn't.
Right, so I think that's the question. I mean,
the other story of under the bed, where it says.
Rabbi, I can't hear you.
The other story of the other story in the Talmud about somebody hiding under the bed, where it ends.
It ends with the roof collapsing.
No, I think it ends where he says, "Get out of here. This is not right," and he says, "Sorry." So it's you get both voices. Is this good or is it not? It's
You're not supposed to be under the bed learning Torah. No. There, yes.
I have a lot of confusing thoughts about a lot of things that go on. I see overlapping. I have a couple of different yet related about, and I mean the fathers and the mothers and what they went through. And I think Rachel has a lot of the life experiences in her way, parallel to Abraham Avinu being tested in his way. So there's words and commentary about Abraham Avinu having gone through 10 tests, and it's classic commentary and well accepted. And Rachel, I have encountered her, she goes through these tests too, in her life, in her way. The voices, she's under the bed, Leah's on the bed. We have the Mishkan. God's voice First it comes from at Har Sinai, it comes from heaven, and yet it channels through a certain way.
Yeah.
In the Mishkan, God's voice is coming from somewhere, but yet it channels through a certain way. So, and the classic comment is when God responds to Abraham and Sarah's amusement about the coming of Yitzchak and the momentary humorous reaction to, can this happen? And God says, who am I that I can't do this thing? What are you laughing about? You know. So Rachel's going through these things, but I keep coming back to the bottom line when I go through these Rachel thoughts is every Friday night that I can bless my daughters, we lead with Rachel and Leah. It's Sarah, Rivka, Rachel and Leah. So it's chronological, and then all of a sudden Rachel breaks the chronology. And she leads for a reason. And I think she leads for different reasons in different people's minds. But for mine, it comes down to she's, I used the word quintessential before, she's virtually an everyday woman. She's the everyone in a sense.
Perfect.
And it appeals to me. And the weeping, and I come back to the weeping part as the righteous women that I have been blessed to be surrounded with, from my grandmother and my parental generation to my wife and my in-laws and the other women around me, is weeping is a coping mechanism that these righteous women are human. They can be jealous. They can be disappointed. They can be hurt. And they can be, you know, forlorn that their goals aren't achieved. And they can't worry about their children and their posterity. And weeping is how they cope.
Yeah.
And God, this appeals to God.
Yeah.
That
I mean,
sees their genuine.
it's the most human, right? It's the most human. I mean, one way to think about this is, why isn't Sarah being asked to sacrifice Isaac? You know, why is it Abraham? And one feminist read on that is, well, she doesn't need to learn the lesson that Abraham needed to learn through that episode, right? She knows the lesson. The lesson is, you can't sacrifice your son. You have to take care of your son. Abraham didn't know that deep down. He had to learn that when you stare in the face of your son, there's no sacrificing your son. There's only caring for your son. There's only human acts of care. It's a feminist reading on the Akedah based on another reading of the Akedah, but I just use that quickly to just give you the headline, and you guys can look at the Melissa Raphael stuff because we won't go into it here. But I think this is my way to really, Barry, I like how you said it. It's like human every day. And the way I think about Rachel's crying is it's the mother in all of us, or the potential mother in all of us, right? And it's not biological, and it's not even gendered, right? It doesn't have, it may be societally structured that way in all kinds of moments in time, but she did get to raise her children. She did, I cannot think of, that's the reason to be crying all the time. You didn't get to raise your children.
Maybe she's being punished for misbehaving.
I don't think so.
Why does Rachel die so young?
I think it's tragic. It's
Excuse me?
tragic. It's tragic.
Well, God does everything. But why does Rachel die so young? I would say because she misbehaved.
So you're gonna take the she's impious and she got punished.
He thinks she should have too pious.
She gave up her position to her sister, and she shouldn't have.
Yeah. Although you got to choose. You got to choose if you're going to go with the Midrash or you're going to go with the Pshat. Because that Pshat read would be, you know what? She was punished for all of her brazenness. She was punished for her impropriety. But you might like that in the Pshat. But then it seems like it doesn't work out for her in the Pshat. But the Midrash would actually, which is valorizing her, they wouldn't see her early death as punishment. The Midrash would say, no, tragedy.
God needed her.
God does need her. So I'll just give you the headline on this post-Holocaust theology, which is incredibly powerful. Melissa Raphael looks at oral histories, memoirs, experiences of women in the Shoah, explicitly women. Melissa Raphael is the scholar. And what she has found through the study of these texts, and you can read her book, read her articles, look at the websites, what she's found is that women's stories of survival are very different than men's stories of survival. And women's stories of survival are about mothering. They're about mothers and mothering. And they're about real mothers, dead mothers, surrogate mothers, children as mothers, and the centrality of mothering. And what Melissa Raphael does with that, so that's just like, she studies these memoirs and she sees that. And then what she does with that from a feminist theological point of view, she builds on Levinas, won't get into that. What she does with that is she basically says that the mother the mother is where God is. In the mothering is where God is. It's not where was God in the Holocaust, it's who was God in the Holocaust. Not where was God. The where was God is like the question that men are asking, and what they're imagining is the God of armor and might, and who's going to sweep in and save through the outstretched arm. But the question is, who is God? And God is in those in those acts of mothering, in those daily acts of kindness, of love, that she sees in building off of the mystical tradition, building off of the Hasidic tradition, of the Shekhinah, the immanent God. She comes to see powerfully the presence of God in these women's stories, in their own acts of kindness. And it's like literally the wiping the face of the child is revealing the face of God. In the care is the revealing of God. And when the care is extinguished, God is extinguished. So I have come to see that as a very, very powerful way, not just to we're not just in the world of like, okay, women were also at Sinai. We're not just in the world of like, there are marginal stories that we got to move to the center. Do you know who God is? God is care and love and kindness. And where you see care and love and kindness, you see God. And there's care and love and kindness in the Holocaust, and God is very present, and the Nazis try to extinguish God through the dehumanizing of people so that there is no care and there is no love and there is no kindness, but they don't succeed. They don't succeed. And it's and I've given you a bunch of excerpts, but it's a very subtle and sophisticated argument. And I think that now I'm inclined to read these incredibly caring narratives, whether, as just, you're commanded to care. You're commanded to care. When you see your child on your lap, Yeled Shashuim, you're commanded to care. That's the maternal response. And so you're eternally weeping because you didn't get to care for your children. And it is so powerful. It is so powerful. It is the most powerful thing there is because it's God's self. It's how God is manifest in the world. And I can even begin to see Rachel's act of love and kindness in those terms. Like extraordinary acts of love and care that are not just patriarchal, well, women are forced into a situation where they have no choice, but all of us need to be acting through tremendous acts of love and care. And that's how we see the face of God. So with that, I leave you the righteous women to bring to your Seder tables and to continue thinking about it.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. Thank you.